Next question goes to you, Mr. McAleer. What do you foresee as the future of the dredging project for Lake Nagawicka, and how will it affect lake residents?
The dredging project, once we get the permits, we're going to know the scope of the project. I think we have a pretty good handle on what that scope's going to be now. And there's going to be need for a referendum because it's obviously going to go over $1 million. The referendum will be successful if the assessment formula is created in such a way that everybody in the city feels that they're being treated fairly. Now, I don't know if that means a little bit of the assessments go against everybody in the city, or if it means the assessments only go against lake owners, or if it means the assessments only go against benefited property owners. One of those three scenarios is going to need to be determined, and I think it's going to take some public hearings, and it's going to take some hard work by the mayor and the common council to come up with a decision on who's going to pay for it. We learned a year ago in April or last April, we learned what happens when you try to fund something incorrectly and a referendum is more expensive than what the people want to pay for. So I think we take what we learned last year in the failed April referendum and we'll plug that into the scenario that we need to come up with for assessing back to do the lake dredging.
All right, thank you. Mr. Schuman, you have 90 seconds.
I chaired lake welfare for 5 years, and I'm glad to see Ken Atwell has carried on. There's a lot of good work being done by this committee. The formula is to have the people who need the dredging, pay for it. The question is, can they afford it? So that depends upon what the DNR comes up with. The common areas could be on the general account, but a lot of the common areas like Bleecker Street may be out of the dredging. So it's a lot of work that needs to be done yet. Again, once we have the permit, and yes, if we do have a referendum which is passed, we can then go out for some outside funding for this. I can then tap into the Corps of Engineers again, because that means with a yes on a referendum, we have the funds available to meet our share of the grant.
All right, thank you. Next question goes to you, Mr. Schuman. Delafield residents are often very outspoken and involved in city politics. What do you think of such citizen activism and resident groups such as One Delafield?
I think this is great. We all have a passion for Delafield. I have a passion for Delafield. We may disagree on the methods and what we need to do, but I think if we all work together, we'll accomplish a better Delafield. Again, the challenge is to make sure this is constructive and it's not destructive, and we respect each other's differences of opinions. So I'm going to work to do this. I want to hear everybody. When somebody asks a question in council, I'm not going to say, what's the real reason they're asking the question? I'll just answer the question. So we'll treat people with respect, because we all care about Delafield, and we want to do what's right for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McAleer.
The Plan B building project shows a 10,000 square foot library. The project plan shows the potential build out to make that library 17,000 square feet. But the verbiage in the Plan B documents say that 7,000 square feet will not be paid for by taxpayers. It needs to be privately funded. I would like to challenge the One Delafield group to come up with the resources, the funding, so that 2 years down the road, when we're building that new library, they can present the funds to the city to do the 7,000 square foot addition at that time. I've mentioned this to a few of the members, but I guess in this forum, I would just like to challenge them to take that into consideration, that would be a project very worthwhile, and it would make sense to do the building all at one time.
All right, thank you. Next question goes to you, Mr. McAleer. This is also from a resident. When Governor Doyle signed last year's budget bill, he created the ability to raise the tax levy at a higher percentage than the legislature approved. Do you agree, and why?
Was that for me?
Yes, sorry. Oh, sure, no problem. When Governor Doyle signed last year's budget bill, he created the ability to raise the tax levy at a higher percentage than the legislature approved. Do you agree with this, and why?
No, I don't. And I think, and you couched that accurately, that it was Governor Doyle that through his, I think they call it Frankenstein pen, changed the budget that the legislature's approved. And I think that's just a smoke and mirrors game to try and get more money out of the taxpayer. I think it's wrong to do that. I think you need to budget for what your needs are and not speculate on what they may be in the future. And I was disappointed at last year's budget meeting when Mayor Schuman was recommending, along with one of the alder people, that they add $180,000 into the budget because Governor Doyle allowed them to do this. And there was some nebulous discussion about we could use that money to help pay for road improvements, but it wasn't earmarked specifically for anything. It was just an extra $180,000. We had an 8.25% increase in the tax levy last year, or this year's budget, and that $180,000 would have made it over 12% increase. So I absolutely disagree with that type of budgeting.
All right, thank you.
Let me add the truth. The discussion we had in the budget was not adding money to the budget. It was a question for road improvements, whether we borrow for that or we put that on a pay-as-you-go basis. We were going to be paying for the road improvements anyhow. Ed McAleer did send a letter regarding the budget on October 15th, and one of the things he suggested was refinance the current debt. We did that back in June of '07, so he was not up to date on that either. We operate a very frugal city. We have a budget book, goes out in October, very thick. We go through it line by line. We have a budget workshop, goes through the Finance Advisory Committee. Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of citizens coming out to make comments on this. I look forward to the citizens coming out, commenting on these line by line. The council looks at this, and we do look at items which we need to do. Back when Ed was the mayor 10 years ago, the DNR gave us an order to fix the dam. That sat around doing nothing. It got started towards the end of Paul Craig's administration, and it was put in this budget. We fixed the dam. Because the dam was not done, FEMA came up with a new floodplain, and we had a lot of consternation with that. They turned us down. We're still looking at some mapping with that. Had this been done 10 years ago, we wouldn't have had this problem.
Thank you. Next question goes to you, Mr. Schuman. Do you envision an expansion of the downtown business district? Why or why not?
We're doing the smart growth plan. Part of the smart growth is the downtown plan, which was done back in the 90s. The suggestion has been made that we take this out and do more information on this, more studies. The suggestion has also been made, since this downtown plan includes the land owned by Mr. Lang south of I-94 at Highway C, perhaps we could do a study on that too. So I think anytime we do studies, we get the input from the citizens of what type of Delafield they would like. This is very important. We can't operate in a vacuum. I do not have all good ideas. I use OPBs a lot. That's other people's brains. So I welcome the comments of the citizens so we can make a better Delafield and work together on this.
Thank you. Mr. McAleer?
I need to rebut the previous comment first. The borrowing documents that were presented for the budget last fall did not reflect that June borrowing. The documents that were presented that showed our debt service shows a $1.5 million debt service for each of the next 4 years. By 2012, the debt service goes down under $1 million, and by 2017, the debt service goes down to $200,000. So the comments that I made at that common council meeting were reflecting the documents that I had in front of me, which did not show the June borrowing.